everyone, it's Alice and welcome to another Thursday in Bookmas. Like last week, this is going to be another Throwback Thursday. So I'm going to be passing you back to Alice from January 2019 for our January wrap-up. My thoughts are of over 20 books. I've got a feeling it's either 22 or 23. I can't work out what I finished exactly when. But there are going to be quite a lot of books wrapped up in this one for you. So I hope that you enjoy it. We will see you tomorrow with another Bookmas video. Hi everyone and welcome to our January wrap up. This is a bit later than planned because we read far too many books in January, so trying to find the time to actually wrap it all up has been quite difficult. So I'm going to split it into a few sections because we read some books on the Kindle, we read some books out of the library, we read some of the Riveted Lit free reads and also a whole stack of physical books as well. So I'm going to start off with the Riveted Lit free reads because we kind of read those throughout the month. I don't know why I'm saying we, because I actually read all of those by myself. I didn't read any of them with my partner because he wasn't interested in them. So the first book that I read from the Riveted Lit programme this month was Lady Rogue by Jen Bennett. I actually ended up giving it 2 stars because I was really disappointed in it. I think I built my expectations too high because I read Starry Eyes by Jen Bennett last year or maybe the year before. Would have been 2018 I read it, but I absolutely loved it. I was blown away. It was one of those ones that I sat up all night reading it and I couldn't put it down. And I was kind of hoping for the same thing because this was her first historical book. She's only ever written contemporaries. So we followed a girl called Theodora who was on a quest to be reunited with her father, who was doing some crazy stuff about Vlad the Impaler. But it felt very modern. Like there was a lot of slang in there that you just wouldn't find in the time period where it was meant to be set. I can't even remember where it was meant to be set because it felt so modern that it didn't feel historical. And I've seen a lot of people say that they thought it was because they had their expectations too high that they didn't enjoy it, but I just think it's not that well written. I just think if you're doing a historical, you need to be able to really embody the time period because that's the whole point of it. So if you're just making all of the language really modern, then it's not the best. So I wouldn't really recommend that one, which is a shame, but I'm looking forward to reading some of Jen Bennett's other contemporaries because everybody absolutely adores those. The next book that I read from the Riveted Lit Free Reads programme was another 2-star read, and that was Songs from the Deep by Kelly Powell. This one started off a lot stronger. It had a really good atmosphere. It's about a little island where there are sirens, but they're not the sirens that you're used to. They're kind of almost like monstrous mermaids, the way that they're described. So they crawl up onto the beach and they sing their song and they put sailors under their thrall. And a little boy is murdered and everybody blames the sirens, but the main character that we follow doesn't think that the sirens are... She doesn't think that the sirens are guilty because she believes that the sirens normally drag the bodies away and the bodies are normally taken, they're not normally left on the beach, and it looks more like the boy has been stabbed rather than killed by a siren. So she teams up with her old friend who is the master of the lighthouse and they try to prove the sirens are innocent. It's a clever little mystery, but it has very slow bits. It took me quite a while to read, which I wasn't expecting because the first 2 or 3 chapters I flew through because the atmosphere is just so richly described. But then it gets to the stage where there's just lots of ruminating, like, oh, well, if it's not him, could it be him? Could it be him? Could it be him? And I would have liked to have seen a bit more investigating rather than the girl just, like, at home planning it all out. It also feels a lot more like a romance because you can tell there's going to be a relationship brewing between the 2 main characters, and where it takes quite a while to get to that stage, it just ended up frustrating me. Like, I like slow burn romances, but only when you get quite a good payoff, and I thought that it didn't really do much for me. The cover was revealed for Kelly Powell's second book last week though, and that's got like a really promising synopsis. It's about like somebody who uses magic to bring people back from the dead, so I'm definitely going to be reading more of her work in the future. This just wasn't really what I was expecting. Again, I think getting my expectations too high on these ones. The next book I read from the Riveted Lit Free Reads programme was Girls with Sharp Sticks by Suzanne Young. This has been on my TBR for as long as I can remember. As soon as I saw that cover, it's got like a really powerful cover and there's like a girl peeling a mask away from her face. And as soon as I saw the cover, I was like, that is the kind of shit I'm going to love. And I ended up giving it 4 stars, so I did really enjoy it. I was glad to actually get a book that was as good as I was expecting. So this is about a girl who is going to a boarding school, and she's being taught by teachers how to be like the perfect girl because they want them to be like good girls who are really well respected and they'll do well for their husbands or they'll be good nannies for like rich people's kids. But she thinks that there's something a bit off about it, and everything kind of comes to a head when one of the girls mysteriously disappears. And the teachers tell her, like, oh no, she had to go home because they were having financial difficulties. But she's spoken to the girl's parents and she doesn't believe that's the case at all. So again, it's like a nice little mystery when she's like trying to work out what's going on, and the payoff is really, really good. I don't want to say too much about it because I don't want to give you any spoilers, because it was one of those things that I kind of saw it coming a little bit, but I thought I was imagining it because I didn't think it was going to be that good. And then when it eventually all came out, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense, but also I still felt a little bit shocked. The second book in the series is coming out towards the end of the year, and I'm definitely going to be carrying on with this one. It's only a duology as far as I'm aware, which I think is nice because it's one of those books, it feels like it's almost wrapped up and then it carries on a little bit and you think like, oh, you could have just left that as a standalone, but I can see why she wants to carry on with this world. And I've heard that with one of her other series, she carried it on a little bit too long and it got a bit draining by the end. I think it was called like The Program, I think. Not one that I've read myself, but I've heard people say that after like book 3 or 4 it's really not worth carrying on with. So I'm hoping she's just going to leave this one as a duology, but I did end up giving this one 4 stars, so I'm definitely happy to carry on. The next book that I read on the Riveted Lit programme was The Best Lies by Sarah Liu. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying that right. But it's all about a girl whose boyfriend gets killed by her best friend. And you start the story off and you're with this girl who is like looking at her boyfriend on the ground, and she's just heard all of the gunshots go off and she's trying to come to terms with the fact that her best friend has killed her boyfriend. And she kind of gets taken in with the police, and you're following it through the interview. But as she tells each part to the interviewer, it jumps back in time so you can see it play out. I always am a fan of non-chronological stories because I think they make the pace much faster, and even though this was one of the longer books that I read through Riveted Lit, it was one of the more gripping ones. Again, it was a 4-star for me. It wasn't quite what I wanted at the end, but I definitely got like a lot of vibes of like, oh, what's it called? The Tess Sharp book. Far From You. I got a lot of vibes like Far From You by Tess Sharp, so I was kind of expecting it to go kind of more down the romantic side of things. But I did think it did a really good job of talking about familial abuse and the way that like when you've got an abusive family member, you can't really relax at home. And it's a case of you're always on edge and you kind of drag your friends into that even if you don't mean to. And I thought the characters were all very well rounded. You could definitely see the different justifications that they had, and you could really empathise with all of them, which I thought was really impressive. And even though you know the boyfriend's going to die, I found myself like, oh, are you sure you can't save him? Because he was actually really, like, he was a good egg. And I think it just shows that, like, it's not always the bad guys that get taken down. I'm definitely interested in reading more of Sarah Liu's writing in the future. This was one of the better ones that I read this month. The next book that I read through the Riveted Lit Free Reads programme was American Panda by Gloria Chow. I'd heard absolutely amazing things about this. It's about a girl from an Asian background who goes off to college and her parents are quite overbearing. It's in like the best way. They really do just want the best for her, but she wants to be a dancer and they want her to be a doctor, and they think that that's the only way that she's going to have the life that they want for her. So she's fighting this inner struggle of like coming to terms with what she wants herself, and also coming to terms with the fact that she needs to kind of disobey her parents to be happy. I think it's a simple concept, but the way that Gloria Chow writes it, you get so invested in the characters, and she starts a relationship with somebody that she knows her parents wouldn't be happy with, and she gets back in touch with her brother who has been exiled from the family because of who he is in a relationship with. So you get like the empathy between those two and then rebuilding their relationship. And honestly, like I read this almost in one sitting. I could not put it down, because even though it's just like, it's quite wholesome, like it's just really kind of uplifting, because even if you feel like you need to be someone for your family, it just proves that it's always better to put yourself first. And that was a 5-star read for me. Definitely looking forward to reading more of Gloria's work in the future, and the co-reveal for her next novel was also released in the last week, and it's just so cute, and I'm really looking forward to picking up more of her work, especially if she carries on getting relationships so spot on. And there was one more book from the Riveted Lit Free Reads programme that we read this month, and that was We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. I'd heard so many good things about it, and I really wasn't sure what to expect, because it's all about this boy who keeps getting abducted. I lied. I said that we didn't read any of them together. We read this one together. It's about a boy who keeps getting abducted, and the aliens are putting him down with this big red button, and if he presses the red button, then he saves the world from inevitable doom. But he doesn't want to press it because he's like, why would I want everybody to survive? Everyone's assholes. And so the aliens keep taking him, and they're like, do you want to press the button now? And he's like, nope, still not pressing it. And then as soon as he's like, oh, I could maybe think about pressing the button, the aliens are like, not taking him, and he doesn't know how to get them to take him. So like, it's a bit wacky in that respect, and you can tell it's like, there's a lot of metaphorical stuff, and it's not exactly like what it seems on the surface. But I just think it's really funny because the aliens keep like returning him back to Earth, and he's just like in his pants, like running across town, like, oh great, this has happened again. And I think, it's brilliant because you've not only got like the little sections, you've also got him pretending that, like, thinking through all of the ways that the world could end. So he's like, oh, what if it's just like big bees? Like, what if there's just like a crazy like bee thing happens and all the bees die and then everything dies? Or what if they like make a ginormous cockroach to eat other cockroaches and then they get so big that they just take over the entire world? And it's just really, really wacky, tongue-in-cheek. There are a few bits that had me like absolutely laughing out loud, which was not convenient because I was reading it out loud, so I had to keep stopping to like have a bit of a giggle. There's a lot of quotes in it that are like really relatable as well, like about like how you feel like you're quite small and insignificant, but really like your life is the most significant thing to you. And I can't think of any off the top of my head, but if you just like go on Goodreads and like look at all the quotes on it, and that will convince you to read it more than I can. But yeah, and there's like really good storylines with like, because our main character is gay and he's going out with somebody who is not out, but he's also the school bully. So it's like, even though, well, they're not really going out, they're just kind of making out a lot. But yeah, so him and this boy, even though they're spending like most of the evenings and like keep sneaking off together, he's still being bullied by him in the public. And I think it's another book when it's very much about how you view yourself compared to how other people view you, and like just being true to yourself. I read one of Sean David Hutchinson's other books last year, and I thought it was brilliant, and this one again was really, really good. It only ended up being a 4-star for us because I thought that the ending was really clever because it didn't wrap everything up neatly, but I thought there was a few areas throughout it where it just seemed like it dragged quite a bit, and there were a few bits that could have been cut. It just got a bit clunky at times, kind of like this explanation. But yeah, definitely going to be reading more of his work in the future. So the next section of books is books that I read through the library. Didn't read that many of them this month, she says, when there was actually probably more than I'm remembering. Okay, so the first book that we finished from the library this month was Love Songs for Skeptics. This is by Christine Psirus. I'm not sure how to I'm not sure how to pronounce Greek surnames, so I'm really sorry if I'm totally butchering that. But it's about a girl who was in love with her best friend, and he moved to America, and now him and his wife have split up, so he's moving back. And she's like, oh, me and Simon are finally going to happen. But meanwhile, she's got loads of crazy stuff going on at work because she's editor for a music magazine, and they want her to start interviewing boy bands to make more money, and she's trying to get this reclusive songwriter to come out of retirement to kind of talk to her and share her story, and she's somebody who's never really done anything with the press. So there's a lot of different layers going on, and you've got like the romance side of things, but you've also got like the career-minded side of things, and I think it's a very clever story, but it's one of those ones that it's like, I don't really know why we didn't like it that much. We only ended up giving it 3 stars. We ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was just one of those stories that, like, as you were reading it, it was kind of forgettable as it was going on. There were a lot of bits that were cute enough, but didn't really feel necessary, and the pace was rather slow. I thought the outcome was very, very predictable, and I saw it coming within the first couple of chapters, but I'm not sure whether, because it is a debut novel, whether that might have been one of the issues, that it's kind of like a more recognisable story structure. So it's one of those things that if you are a fan of chick lit and you read quite a lot of it, you'll probably enjoy it, and if you're new to chick lit and you don't read much of it, you'll enjoy it because you won't be used to that structured story. But if you're someone who like dabbles occasionally but reads like the more popular ones, then this is probably one that you're going to want to skip. The next book I read from the library this month was A Faraway Magic by Amy Wilson. Now Amy Wilson is a children's author. It's kind of like middle grade, like older children books. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that follows a boy who is trying to defeat magical demon creatures who keep coming through, like, the ether. I can't remember what it was called. They keep coming through from, like, another world into his world, and he has to defeat them. And he is working with a girl who has just moved to town after her parents were killed by one of the creatures that his parents let slip through. So there's, like, the dynamic there between them when it's, like, neither of them realise this. You realise it very quickly as a reader, but neither of the characters realise straight away. So they're building this lovely little friendship because he's an outcast and she's the new girl, and they, like, no one really even notices that he's there, and then she comes along and she infiltrates his life, and she, like, really insinuates herself into his family, and his family love her and her family love him, and it's a very cute little story. You could see that it was meant to be based off of Beauty and the Beast because of the fact that he was, like, the outcast kid, and they had, like, a rose in the attic, but it didn't really follow the same story structure quite as neatly, and it was also a very quick read. I normally say that as a good thing, but it was a case of, like, it was very obvious what the plot was going to be. It was very obvious that they were going to get there quite quickly, and it could have done with a few more kind of cliffhanger elements because it felt like it was all resolved a bit too neatly, too quickly. I'm not sure, because obviously I'm not the intended audience for this book. I don't know whether, like, younger people would feel the complete opposite and be like, no, that was just enough tension for me. So it's probably my own fault for reading some quite high octane books this month. But I only ended up giving it 4 stars. But I still really rate Amy Wilson's writing, and she's one of those people that brings the magic into the everyday very neatly. And if you like books that are, like, twists on the ordinary, it's definitely an author you're going to want to check out. The next book I read from the library this month was Watch Us Rise by Ellen Hagen and Renee Watson, and this was one of my most disappointing reads of this month. I ended up only giving it 2 stars. It's about a group of friends. One of the girls called Jasmine, her father is dying, and her friends, they make a group at school that's said to be, like, feminist, and it's all about, like, being outspoken women and speaking up against the kind of everyday sexism that they experience in the school environment, but then the teachers try and take it down because they think it's causing disruptions. So my main issue is the fact that this book's a dual perspective. You follow Jasmine, whose dad is dying, and you follow Chelsea, and Chelsea is the most spoiled bitch you are ever going to meet. Like, Jasmine is a bigger girl, and she's quite uncomfortable about that, and a lot of her pieces of poetry and a lot of her, like, blog entries to their, like, group's page are about her size and about trying to fit in. And then Chelsea comes along and is like, oh look, I'm going to buy t-shirts for our group, nothing bigger than an XL. Like, you're meant to be best friends. You're meant to be somebody who's really socially conscious and, like, totally campaigning for women's rights and totally campaigning for equality, and then you're just completely dismissing the fact that your friend even exists. Like, bitch, sit down. I hate you. And then she's just so annoying. Like, she's got a romance with this guy who has a girlfriend, and she's like, I don't need you to like me, but I really wish you would like me. And then it's just never addressed again. He, like, goes off for, like, a date with his girlfriend, and then he just never is addressed again. And I'm like, why do we have this whole romance built up for it to just be completely dropped? Like, I don't care. The romance between Jasmine and the boy that she ended up getting with, I think his name was Oscar, the romance between them was quite cute because they've been, like, friends forever and everybody knew they were going to end up together, and I really enjoyed her story. And if it had just been Jasmine's story, I would have enjoyed this book a lot more. But honestly, every time Chelsea spoke, I was like, you're so spoiled. Like, she's, like, a skinny white girl, and she's got, like, really rich parents, and she's like, oh no, I have such struggles. And it's like, yeah, you can have struggles, but you need to show them on the page. You can't just have her being, like, completely getting away with everything. Like, oh, teachers don't like it when we throw flyers all over the gym. Of course they don't like it. What did you expect? Did you expect them to be, like, really, really happy? And it's like they're trying to do, like, good activism things, but it's all so misguided. And I honestly, like, I really hope this doesn't inspire anybody to do any of this, because I just feel like it's just going to go rapidly downhill. I enjoyed the fact that it taught people about some, like, popular feminist icons. Like, there's references to, like, Frida Kahlo. Some other feminist artists are in there. They do, like, shirts that have got, like, the feminist icons picture on the front and then, like, a quote on the back. Would love to get my hands on some of those if they were made. That would be really awesome. But overall, definitely want to avoid. There's far better books about feminism, and there's far better books about activism, and I'm not really quite sure what was going on here. Okay, and I read one more library book in January, but I'm going to talk about that a bit later because it's a continuation from one of my many, many books that I read this month. So, here we go with the physical books. I realise I've put them bottom to top. What's wrong with me? I am a maniac. Oh.
Just knock over our pile of books as a mic on it.
No, don't do that. Don't do that, Alyce. Right. So the first 3 books that we read physically this month was 4, a Divergent collection, Insurgent and Allegiant. This was finishing off my reread, my partner's first read of the Divergent trilogy, which we started last year. All of these ended up being 2-star reads. Insurgent, first time around, I gave it 5 stars because half of the stuff that happened in Divergent I thought happened in this one because I read them back to back, like in the same 24-hour period. Allegiant, I hated first time around, but for some reason on Goodreads I'd given it 4 stars. I don't think I knew what 3 stars or below were because this was before I blogged and I was just really, really nice and I was like, it's okay, it's a book. I don't really like it all that much, so it's 4 stars. What's wrong with you, past Alyce? No. So, yeah, if you haven't read Divergent, I'll be very surprised because it's one of those books that, like, everybody's read at this point. But there's a girl called Triss, and she's in, like, a future version of Chicago where the town is state, city, I'm not sure what it is. It's separated into 5 factions. There's the Erudite, the Candor, the Amity, the Dauntless, and the Abnegation. And Triss is an Abnegation who ends up transferring to Dauntless, which means she goes from being in a faction which is very contained, they're very quiet, they're very meek and polite, into being the Dauntless, who are like the daredevils, the risk takers. And this is a story about how she kind of comes to terms with transferring into the new faction, and then loads of political shit goes down, and all of a sudden they're like fighting for their lives and people are dying left, right and centre, and it gets very, very dramatic very quickly. But as you can tell by the fact these are all 2 stars, it doesn't hold up to a reread, and I think once you've read a few dystopians, it doesn't really hold up at all. Like, the writing is so clunky. There were bits in Insurgent that were literally repeated on, like, the same page. It would be like, oh, description of building. I'm like, you've just described that building. Like, it changed from, like, being described as a rectangle to being described as a square, and I'm like, oh, it's such a magically changing building. And I think when you're younger, if you're not, like, somebody who really focuses on the details, that's something that you're not going to pay attention to, but that really annoys me now, because I'm like, so many people get paid to do editing, and you've been paid far too much money to let things like that slip through, so just stop. It was my first time reading the 4 short story collection, which is 4 short stories about the character 4. We thought we'd read this instead of rereading Divergent because we only read it a few months ago. Honestly, there's one online which we also read called Free 4 that you can get free on Kindle. Far recommend that because that I ended up giving 4 stars. The average of all 4 of these stories was 2 stars. There was some 1 stars, I think there was a 3 star, but it's just not worth it. You don't really get the feeling that 4 is a different character. Like, it just reads exactly the same as Triss's scenes and Triss's voice. And I think the Free 4 that is on Kindle, you really get his voice a lot better. I don't know why that wasn't put in this collection. Probably because they wanted it to be 4 short stories about 4. But the best one about him isn't in here. I don't understand. But yeah, if you're looking to, like, experience the Divergent world and you don't care about getting spoilers for the first book, maybe try this because it's shorter, it's a much quicker read. Then if you really enjoy this, you can carry on and then you can, like, read it from Triss's perspective. But at this point, I don't recommend any of those. I'm going to do, like, a blog post wrap-up thing at some point, talking about them a bit more thoroughly. So we were just doing really, really well at finishing series this month, so most of the other ones on here are series that we've ended up finishing. So the next 2 books that we read in January were actually The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass from the His Dark Materials trilogy. We read Northern Lights in December. Subtle Knife ended up being a 5-star, Amber Spyglass was a 4-star. This is about a girl called Lyra in a world that's like an alternate version of our world. So she's in like a different kind of Oxford, a different Britain, and she has a demon called Pantalaimon, and they go on wacky adventures together. One of them involves a knife, one of them involves a spyglass, like one of them involves a compass, but it's called Northern Lights in the original version, not the Golden Compass, but you can see. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't read these when I was younger, because the writing's really good. It's a really easy thing to, like, slip into. And we also read the last book that we read out of the library was actually the first book in the continuing series, which is called La Belle Sauvage. It's the first book in the Book of Dust trilogy, but it's actually before Northern Lights chronologically. So you can read La Belle Sauvage and then read these 3 and then carry on with The Secret Commonwealth and what will eventually become the last book in the Book of Justice trilogy. Or you can read these and then read those. The Belle Sauvage follows a boy called Malcolm. He has a canoe, rowboat, called La Belle Sauvage, and there's a big flood, and he has to take baby Lyra to safety with his colleague, who he absolutely hates, called Alyce. Lots of wacky adventures. It's a bit of a quest novel because you're like, oh, you've got to get the baby to safety. I actually think I ended up enjoying that one more than the Amber Spyglass, but we did also give it 4 stars because it was quite slow at points. Like, the first half of the book is before the flood, the second half is after the flood, but the whole time, even just based off the front cover, it's pretty obvious that there's going to be a flood. So I think it's one of those books that if it was cut a bit shorter, or if the flood happened earlier, I probably would have ended up giving it 5 stars, but it just moved a bit too slowly for me. But it was really lovely to get back into that world, even though we'd only left it behind like 2 weeks before. And we are actually nearly done with The Secret Commonwealth now. Still really enjoying it. I think Philip Pullman is an amazing author, and if you haven't read any of his books, just give Northern Lights a go, because I didn't think I was going to like it all that much, and then as soon as we kind of got into Subtle Life, that was when I like really fell in love with the writing and the world. And I think if you try the first one and you're not sure, try a few chapters of The Subtle Knife. If you still don't like it, give up, because it doesn't get better from there. But if you enjoy The Subtle Knife, you'll enjoy the rest of it. And the next 2 books that we read in January were also an attempt to finish a series. We read Golden Sun and Morning Star by P.S. Brown. This is the second and third book in the Red Rising What Was trilogy. Is now 6 books, I think it's going to end up being. But this is like the end of the original series. So this follows a boy called Darrow in a world where you have like a hierarchy of colours. So the golds are the top, the reds are the bottom. Darrow is a low red, so he is the lowest of the low. And it isn't until after his wife is killed that he realises that all of the other colours have been deceiving the reds for years, and his whole worldview is blown apart, and he decides with this terrorist organisation called the Sons of Ares, he decides that he's going to take down gold and he's going to change society forever. And this is the story of whether he manages to do that. These were both 5 stars first time. This was a reread for me. Second time reading Morning Star, third time reading Golden Sun. Absolutely love both of them, 5 stars still, but this was the first time my partner had read them and he was just blown away. We're going to be reading Iron Gold in March and then carrying on with Dark Age. They are chonky boys, so we needed a bit of a break before we carried on, but honestly, as soon as I finished the last page of Morning Star, I was so tempted to just pick up Iron Gold and just go straight for it, because I still haven't read it yet. Been putting it off because I don't want bad things to happen, but bad things happen in these, and it's for the best reasons. Sometimes books that rip your heart out are the best books you're going to read, so just read books that are going to destroy you. The next book I read in January was actually on my Kindle, and it was Fireblood by Ellie Blake, which is the sequel to Frostblood. I read Frostblood in December, gave it 2 stars, wasn't really impressed with it, and then I read Fireblood, and it's just the same story again. So one of the characters randomly finds out that they're royalty. Cool. Training montages. Cool. Trying to destroy a throne. Cool. Like, it's all just the same story over again, and I found myself like, oh, I think I've already read this. No, I hadn't. I just read Frostblood like 3 weeks before, and I'm gonna carry on and finish Nightblood next month. I don't know why I'm gonna do it to myself, because this was a 2 star, Frostblood was a 2 star, Nightblood might manage to be a 1 star. Who knows? But we're all gonna find out together, and I'm really not looking forward to it.
If it's the same book, it'll be a 2 star.
I know, it's just gonna be another at least it means it's a solid 2 star series. The next book that I read in January was After the Fire by Will Hill. I started this 2 years ago, got like 50 pages in, and for some reason just put it down, and I'd forgotten I'd started it. And I was looking back, because what I try and do is every single year I try and read the Way Book Prize shortlist in its entirety, and this was actually the winner of 2018, and I read 7 books out of the 10 book shortlist. One of them was La Belle Sauvage, ticked that off this month. Now I've ticked After the Fire off, which was 4 stars for me. Actually, out of all of the 9 that I've read, would have picked this as the winner. And I'm going to read Indigo Donut, which is somewhere behind me, up here. Going to read that one next month, and then I've actually finally finished the 2018 shortlist, and then I'll know whether the right person won. Got a feeling they did. So After the Fire follows a girl called Moonbeam. How did I forget that? Who was part of a cult. The cult has ended in quite an explosive fashion, and this is her being helped through therapy and interviewed about what went on there, so that they can help her come to terms with it and move on into the future. So you get to see, again, it's one that's non-chronological, so you jump from after the fire to before the fire to after the fire to before the fire, and after the fire is Moonbeam being helped through therapy, and you see the other kids who have also come through this situation and how they all interact together. There's a boy called Luke who's really struggling to come to terms with it all being over. There's a few of the younger kids who have literally no idea what's going on, but they like playing with their toys. But I think I ended up giving it 4 stars because I thought it was very, very predictable. You have, at the beginning, there's like a scene where Moonbeam hints towards the fact that she knows something that nobody else does, and then a few chapters later, you get told by somebody else that something has happened and no one else seems to know what it is. So it's pretty obvious that Moonbeam is responsible for it. I'm trying not to be spoilery. But when it eventually came out, I kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, wow, that was predictable. And until that point, I had been thinking it was going to be a 5 stars. But I just think if the whole thing kind of hinges off of your character concealing the secret and it's really, really transparent to the reader from the beginning, it's not really well done, which is a shame. But definitely a worthy winner, and I'm not surprised that it did win, because it normally seems to be books that kind of jump between different time periods. Not time periods. It seems to be the books that are told non-chronologically that win the prize easier. So like Goodbye Perfect, also told non-chronologically, that was last year's winner. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's shortlisted this year to see whether you can guess who's going to win just based off of the chronology of their story. The next book that I read in January was also on my Kindle, and it was Foul is Fair by Hannah Cappin. I'm going to share more about this one on my blog towards the end of February because I am taking part in the blog tour. But this is about a girl who is sexually assaulted at a party by a group of boys, and she decides to get her revenge. So she transfers to their school, she infiltrates their friendship group, she gets into a relationship with one of their friends, and she decides that they are all going to die. And it is wacky, and it is dramatic, and it is so bloody good. And I'm surprised I haven't heard of Hannah Cappin before, because she's got another book out that a lot of people have gone, like, they've given it quite good reviews, but I just haven't heard as much about it. But this is definitely one of those people that I'm going to be keeping an eye out for her work in the future, and I'm so looking forward to doing my review post and like really getting into my thoughts on it. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I think it was just really, really well written, and if you like a good revenge plot, you're definitely going to be a fan of Foul is Fair. So the next book that we read in January was The Guinevere Deception by Kirsten White. This is a King Arthur retelling that follows a girl who is pretending to be Guinevere. Guinevere is dead, and this girl is Merlin's daughter, and she is moving to the castle and pretending to be Guinevere so that she can marry Arthur and she can kind of look after him for Merlin, who has been banished. You'd think, being a King Arthur retelling, that it would be interesting. It's not. I read this as part of the Owl Crate book club with my partner. So we read like a chapter a day, and I thought, oh, it's going to be really hard to put it down. I'm going to really want to get back into it every morning. The complete opposite. There was the most boring dragon encounter that I've ever read. There was a really flimsily constructed almost love square that didn't really go anywhere. There was like a wild boar that just gets killed. And it's like all of the kind of dramatic bits were resolved so quickly that you had no reason to feel tension. You had no reason to keep picking it up. I don't know why people recommend Kirsten White's writing if they're like if she writes like this, because this felt more like a romance than anything, and there wasn't even any kind of romantic aspects in it, really. Like, she marries a guy who she doesn't want to marry to protect him, and then she thinks she's fallen in love with him, but then he's always off doing things to look after Camelot. And I don't really know how to describe it, because like it wasn't really fantastical and it wasn't really romantic, and I'm just not quite sure. Like, I mean, the cover's gorgeous. Owl Crate did a really good job redesigning this one, because it's normally like gold and blue, and I don't really like it. But this is really nice with like the green and silver. But this is definitely one of those trilogies that I'm not going to be carrying on with. But I also kind of want to, because my partner guessed what was going to happen, and I'm interested to see if his guess is right. And I think I figured something out also based off of the next book I read, which sounds weird, but I'll explain. But yeah, this ended up being a 2-star, and I'm really disappointed because it was the first Kirsten White book I'd read. But like, I might give it a go. If you guys have any recommendations for her other work, leave them down below, because I know she is a really well-loved author. And the last book that I read in January was Here Be Wizards by Sarah Moosey. This was kindly sent to me by Shrine Bell. I reviewed the first 2 books in the Snowdonia Chronicles, which is Here Be Dragons and Here Be Witches, for them probably like 3 years ago, I think. It's taken a while for this 3rd book to come out, but it was really nice to kind of jump back into the world and get to meet up with Ellie again and see what was going on with her and Henry. Henry is a dragon and Ellie is a teenage girl, and they fall in love. But like, Henry can like shapeshift. He's also a teenage boy for some of it. But then it's hard to explain what went on with this series because lots of wacky stuff has occurred in the last 2 books, as you can imagine. But this also is kind of a King Arthur retelling, because you like go off and see Merlin, who is having a relationship with the Lady of the Lake, and my prediction for the Guinevere deception is that she is the daughter of Merlin and the Lady of the Lake. And nothing has been said in Kirsten Slight's book, but based off of Sarah Moosey's book, I think I might be right. So it was quite fun that I ended up reading these back to back, having no idea. Like, I literally just picked this up as soon as it came, had no idea that it had anything like Merlin-y in it. So it was quite a fun surprise to get halfway through and be like, ooh, this is a much more exciting version. It starts off with a helicopter crash, there's a changeling, there's fire everywhere, it's all magical. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I think the ending's a bit weird. Like, it just kind of, there's a twist, which I can't go into, that I didn't see coming and didn't really seem natural. And then the book kind of carries on down that road and I wasn't expecting it. But, definitely think this is a worthwhile series for reading. It's a bit like young adult. Like, I'd say it was definitely more like teen than young adult. Like, there's lots of chat speak, and Rhiannon, who is Ellie's best friend, literally the only words she says is like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I'm like, Rhiannon, chill your boots for like half a minute. You're getting really on my tits. But yeah, like, it's definitely a fun one, and if you're looking for something that's like still quite chonker but is a bit fun and light-hearted and still has some kind of darker moments, this is a really good series for you. So thank you again to Shrine Bell for sending this to me, and I can't wait to work with you again, Lorna, because like, it has been far too long. So yeah, looking forward to getting a review for this one written up and posted, hopefully within the next week or so. So that was all the books that we read in January. I'm just going to quickly count up how many there were because I did not keep track and I didn't count them up beforehand. That was stupid. Why am I like this? How long did you say we had? 11 minutes. Okay, I've got 8 minutes to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. 23. Okay, so that was all 23 books that we read in January. Now, February is also looking like it's going to be a really good reading month because we're on the 8th of February and we've finished 7 books. So it's going to be a big wrap up at the end of February as well. I'm really sorry. But also, really not sorry because look how many books we have read. That's really, really cool. So if you've read any of these books recently and you want to share your thoughts, leave them down below. If you really disagree with any of my ratings and you want to like have a discussion, leave them down below. If you like this video, give it a like or do the subscribing stuff, like tweet me, I don't know, just reach out. I want your input. But yeah, it was good to get to talk about books with you for a bit, and we will see you next time. Bye!